right, last time we showed you how we harvest our outdoor worm bin each week, and now I want to show you where and how we store our castings. And this right here is just a kitty litter bin, and I have drilled holes in it all around it, and that is so that the castings can breathe. And let's look inside. Right here, you can see we have all kinds of castings, and the ones on top are the ones I just pulled out of the outdoor worm bin. Now, I do not get every little cocoon or worm out. I do my best, but they're all going to be in here. So we have to have a way in order to get those cocoons and worms out, or they'll go in the garden, which is okay also, but garden worms and compost worms are different. So what I do is I take a little container and I put a little bit of food in it. And this just came from something we purchased, but a lot of times I'll use egg cartons. And we'll just set this in the middle right here and kind of bury it down with the food. And the worms will hatch and they'll come inside. And I check this about every time I add more castings. So something like this is very easy, and I leave it outside, so it's not a problem. It's kind of weatherproof. But at the same time, with the holes, the castings can breathe, and certainly the worms can breathe also. And there's even holes in the very bottom in case the worms would ever need to flee, but I haven't had that issue. Now I have 2 of these, and I can always make more. My mom has a cat, so she has a plenty supply of these. But sometimes what I do is when it gets about halfway down, I'll pour it into another one so the castings way down below get used, and I'm not just using the top castings. So there you go. There's how I store it. So now let's get into feeding the outdoor worm bin. So last time we were in this outdoor worm bin, we gave kind of a massive feeding, and we fed in layers. I put a lot of cardboard down, then a layer of food, and then a lot of cardboard down, then another layer of food. So when we harvested just about a half an hour ago, there was a lot of this cardboard shreds left in the siftings, and I put that back on here. So what you're seeing is not quite what it looked like when I unfolded these things. We had just a lot of castings. So I want to take a quick temperature in here. It's about 95 degrees outside, but inside the worm bin itself, it looks like it is somewhere around 87 degrees Fahrenheit. There's an 86.5 and another about 86.7. So the reason I want to take the temperature is because when we put that massive feeding in here, I kind of made a regular hot compost pile right in the center of my bin in the middle of summer. So what I did was the next day I came out and kind of tested it, and it felt kind of warm to the touch. So what I did was dig down, and I didn't see any worms in the middle. I just kind of saw the mush of food. And as I went out here, I started to see more and more worms on the outside. So worms are smart creatures. If your bin is too hot or too wet or, too this or that, the worms will kind of move away from that. So a bigger bin can handle some anomalies within the bin. But you still don't necessarily want to create a hot compost pile in your bin. So what I did was I just kind of broke it up and spread everything around, and that made the temperature go down significantly right away. So let's go ahead and dig in here and see if we see any of the food scraps from last time. This looks like a bit of a carrot with all kinds of worms all throughout it. So that's that. We've got a mango seed. Now we fed a lot. We fed several banana peels. We fed apples, peppers, tomato tops, carrots, cucumbers, strawberries. And we still had a little bit of pineapple bottom from 2 feedings ago. And I'm wondering if we're going to see that. Right here is, again, some unknown substance of food scrap, but we'll keep looking around. And something I want to show you is just the amount of worms in here. It's a little bit harder to see than other times because I've got all these shreds on top. But as I pull across like this, check it out, just tons of worms. So we had 6,000 worms at one time, and then I gave 2,000 away. And that was about a month and a half ago. So I'm guessing that their population is probably coming right back up to 6,000 if it's not there already. It takes about maybe 2 months for a worm to go from hatching from a cocoon to full grown. So, we might expect to see some of those in here. And I'm also thinking that the carrying capacity of this bin itself is probably somewhere around 6,000 worms with how full I keep it. So we're going to give another huge feeding. In fact, I weighed it out and it's about 6 pounds of food. So I figured, oh, wow, look at that. Sorry. Just a big clump of red wigglers and kind of mashed food at the bottom. But yeah, that's awesome. I think this is banana peels. But I love when I run into just clusters of worms. It's so much fun. And then they stick on your hands. So let's keep digging down here. But anyway, so 6 pounds of food for 6,000 red wigglers. Now, there's a lot of stuff out there that says a pound of red wigglers can eat half a pound of food, or a worm can eat half its weight in one day. But I have not found that to be the case in my experience. I would say the worms probably eat about their weight in about 6 to 10 days. And here we go. Here's some more clumped up food, which what I'm doing here is kind of aerating things out, making sure there's no rotten food in one place getting fermented or anaerobic or smelling like ammonia, because we need the beneficial bacteria which thrive on oxygen to be growing in here. And the worms like that too. So I'll keep going around here. So yeah, so anyway, I just don't see that in my bins. So if you hear any of that out there, that the worms can eat their weight every day or every 2 days, I just don't find that to be true in practice. And I think it's more like every 7 to 10 days. And I feed these a lot. I give them a lot of bedding. I give them a lot of food. And they're at a decent temperature, as you saw. So I give them everything they need. But I just don't see those kind of numbers. So let's go ahead and make a spot here. And what I'm going to do is try to make less of a hot compost pile in the middle of my bin here. And I'm just going to layer the shreds right here. And then I'm just going to dump all the food, put my amendments, and then bury it in with maybe a little bit of shreds on top. And of course, I have a bunch of worms that we took off from our harvest, and we're going to make a time lapse at the end with them. So first things first, in goes the shredded cardboard. And this cardboard is shredded and it's dry with all the food that we put in here. It's going to go ahead and wet that down. So I'm not worried about wetting this right now. And this bin does a fantastic job of regulating dampness and moisture. The moisture level in here right now is fantastic. And if you're looking for a shredder, I found that my shredder absolutely chews up cardboard, no problem. I've got a couple of videos that actually show it do that. And I've got affiliate links if you're interested. I think this one is the micro cross-cut shredder. So here is what we had in mind. I weighed this out, and together this is about 6 pounds of food. So we're gonna just dump this in, and I'm noticing that I did not get the the sticker off the banana, but the worms will actually help me with that. So in this goes. Man, I made a little bit of a mess, but that's why I have a tarp under here. So this has been frozen. I just kind of keep it in my freezer and then add the food scraps as we go. And I let it thaw out a little bit. And then now we'll kind of dump this watermelon and some of these other vegetables and fruits in here. And same thing, these are just a couple of containers that we keep in the freezer. And I let them thaw out a little bit. As you can see, the watermelon looks like it's retained some of its frozen nature, but it is mostly water, so it's really going to dampen those cardboard shreds. And I'm also not too worried about the worms sticking to this. The worms are really good at avoiding things, and I've never seen a worm stuck to any of the frozen food that I put in here. So let's go ahead and add our amendments, and then we'll bury this up. So the executive producer just said it looks like a summer salad, and I'd have to agree with her. This is really colorful. I love the feedings that we're able to give them, and it means that I'm eating pretty well too. So my first amendment is just pulverized oats that I had left in my pantry. Y'all have probably heard the story if you've watched some of my other videos, but I found it in there, and I looked at the expiration date, and it was 4 years ago. So that shows me I need to get in my pantry more often, and check yours too, and just whatever grains you have in there, go ahead and grind up. And then next, I like to take my spent coffee and tea grounds and add them as worm food to my worm bins. And I find that the worms absolutely enjoy it. And even if they don't, I think it's worm casting, so it looks the same. But no, really, they actually do eat the coffee pretty well. And then finally, to get rid of my eggshells and to get some calcium into my garden and to help the worms digest their food because they have gizzards, I add some pulverized eggshells. And again, I use a magic bullet blender. I've got some links if you're interested in seeing how much they cost. They're really inexpensive, and they're so useful in the worm bin and with grinding my coffee beans. But anyway, pulverized eggshells. You know what? I think I do want to put just a little bit of a layer of cardboard over the top before I bury this up. And now we'll go ahead and kind of bury it here. And I always like to bury my food. It just kind of gives them kind of a global access to the food so that they can get to it from all angles here. Also helps to set up my worm time lapse, which is coming up pretty nicely. And this bin takes a lot of food and produces a lot of castings for me, and I love it. And it takes a lot of bedding too. But I've got a couple other bins. I've got a tiny worm bin if you're in a small space apartment or just don't produce a lot of food scraps. So you can follow along with that bin. Or I've got a worm tower, and if you're a beginner, worm towers, I think, are just fantastic for beginners. They make it so easy, and they make the moisture control, that kind of thing, so much easier for a beginner. So let's go ahead and get those worms and start our time lapse. So inside here are all the worms we collected as we were sifting and collecting castings right before we did this video. So let's go ahead and dump them on and watch them squiggle down. Always seems to be one that likes to take its sweet old time. So I hope everybody's having a great day. I hope you're all doing well with your worm bins. So happy vermicomposting, everybody. Take care now.